In 133 BC, Emperor Wu of Han planned a massive ambush to annihilate the Xiongnu at Mai. The plan leaked at the last moment. The Xiongnu Qiongnu withdrew his 100,000 horsemen. 300,000 Han troops chased only dust. Years of preparation evaporated. Worst of all, the 67 years peace between Han and Xiongnu, maintained by marrying princesses and paying tribute, was now torn apart. Xiongnu revenge was swift and savage. They attacked along the entire frontier, simultaneously storming towns, slaughtering garrisons, dragging populations into captivity. Beacon fires burned from autumn into spring. Towns fell one after another. The peace of 67 years was destroyed in months. At court, officials who had pushed for war now blamed each other. The people discovered their emperor had shattered the peace, but could not protect them. Inside Wei Yang Palace, Emperor Wu waited. He was 23. He had gambled everything on Mai. Now he had lost. Xiongnu retaliation flooded the border, and he had no dam. Not one general gave him hope. These men had known only peace under previous emperors. They spoke of defense, of rebuilding the marriage alliance, of the old saying that the Xiongnu could not be beaten. Emperor Wu listened in silence. He needed a blade. From 133 to 129 BC, 4 years, he could not find it. The frontier beacons never went dark. Every autumn, the Xiongnu rode south, harvesting populations like crops. Small Han counterattacks failed. Emperor Wu shut himself away with maps and sand tables, plotting day and night. He knew the problem. Han infantry squares and chariots were built for plains warfare. Once beyond the border, there were no roads, no walls, no directions. Supply lines stretched until armies starved. The Xiongnu lived on horseback, needed no supply lines. Find them and you got lost. Ignore them and they appeared at your door. This chasm between military systems could not be bridged by numbers. In 129 BC, the Xiongnu launched another offensive, this time targeting Xianggu Commandery. Border reports flooded Chang'an. Xianggu was collapsing. Emperor Wu decided no more defense. He would send 4 armies simultaneously deep into the steppe. No one at court supported the plan, but no one dared object. 4 armies. The first, led by Li Guang, the empire's most experienced commander against the Xiongnu. The second and third also under the court's best available generals. The 4th army, Emperor Wu's finger paused on the map, would bypass the main Xiongnu force and drive straight into their rear. The choice of commander for this 4th army caused uproar. A man who had never independently led a battle. A man whose name the senior officials spoke of only with contempt. No one knew why the emperor chose him. Perhaps no general would take it. Perhaps the emperor, having placed all his bets, was simply throwing his last die. The 4 armies marched out. The news came back like a knife. Li Guang's army was encircled and annihilated. He was captured, escaped by feigning death and stealing a horse, and fled back alone. The 2nd army was routed. 7,000 of 10,000 lost. The 3rd army wandered the steppe and returned, having found nothing. 3 defeat reports lay before the emperor. Dead silence. No one dared meet his eyes. The only remaining news was from the 4th army. There was no news. 10,000 men had vanished into the grassland. No messengers, no signals. The court shook their heads. All must be dead. Emperor Wu sat helpless. He could only wait, clinging to his last hope. All of China endured a sleepless night. The commander of the 4th army was named Wei Qing. At court, his name meant one thing. His half-sister was the emperor's favored consort, a royal in-law. A shadow said to have risen through a woman. No one knew where he came from. No one wanted to know. Wind the clock back 20 years, to where everything began. The stables of the Marquis of Pingyang. A boy crouched grooming a warhorse. He was a household slave, tasked with feeding horses, saddling them, leading them, and kneeling as a mounting block. No one called his name. They called him that riding slave. He bore the surname Wei from his mother, a bondwoman in the estate's weaving room. She had several children by different fathers. Wei Qing was the middle child. They shared no father, only a mother, and the status of slaves. His biological father, a county clerk named Zheng Ji, had a brief encounter with the bondwoman during a funeral procession, then returned home and never appeared again. On the slave registry, the boy was listed under the Wei surname, a servant without a named father. As a child, his mother sent him to his father's household. There he became the lowest creature. The legal wife despised him. The legitimate sons used him as a servant. Herding sheep, gathering firewood, menial labor. They called him bastard. He ate cold scraps after others finished. He slept on hay by the sheep pen, wind knifing through the door. He tried to fit in. Worked, obeyed, never talked back. It was useless. His existence was an insult, living proof of a husband's infidelity. They could not kill him, but made him live like a dog. Finally, he left. He chose to be a slave with dignity, rather than a son without it. Back at the estate, he became a riding slave. Assigned to the stables, he learned to ride. Not ceremonial riding, but the riding of the hunt. Balance at full gallop, ducking branches, gripping the horse with his thighs to free his hands, rolling clear from a fall. He learned to read terrain, riding for hours as a beater in the hunting squad. He learned which grass hid swamp, which streams could be forded, which ridges concealed ravines. He learned to track. He learned to encircle, detailed to the flank, to cut off prey escape routes, requiring precise judgment of when to close in. Mobility, tracking, flanking, encircling. These skills hunted beasts on the Marquis' estate. On the steppe to the north, the Xiongnu used the same logic. The difference? They hunted people. He had no idea what these skills were worth. He was just a riding slave. Barring accident, he would grow old and be buried in an unmarked grave. The crack came through his half-sister, Wei Zifu. She was a singer in the Marquis' household. Her looks and voice got her selected for Princess Pingyang's troupe. In 139 BC, Emperor Wu spent a night at the princess's estate. Wei Zifu was brought in to sing. He set down his cup. She entered the imperial harem. A bondwoman's daughter had entered the center of power. For the stable slave, this meant a job in the palace. He was summoned as a low-level guard in Jianzhang Palace. A gatekeeper, far from real power, but simply being noticed by the emperor invited a death sentence. A jealous noble had him kidnapped and locked in a cell to be killed secretly. No one would investigate a riding slave's disappearance. Friends from the palace guards. Men of similarly humble origins broke him out, risking their lives. Emperor Wu did not investigate the kidnappers, but he promoted Wei Qing to Grand Master of the palace, a civil rank allowing him to advise. The emperor was signaling, "This man is under my protection." But the old nobles still looked down on him. In their eyes, he could not fight and had no military experience. Forever a shadow behind his sister. For nearly 10 years, he served as a civil official, listening to endless debates about the Xiongnu. The war party shouted, the peace party argued. No one could answer. If we fight, how do we win? He stood in the corner, silent. When Xiongnu fell under threat and Emperor Wu decided on 4 armies, 3 went to seasoned generals. The 4th, the most difficult and hopeless route, went to Wei Qing. Perhaps no other general would take it. Perhaps the emperor trusted him through the consort connection. Perhaps he realized every experienced general had lost for decades. Their experience was bankrupt. Why not gamble on a man without it? At least, he would not be shackled by a lifetime of failures. And perhaps, crucially, he remembered this man had been a riding slave. He had ridden wild grasslands chasing game. He knew terrain without roads. He knew hunger, wind, and getting lost. Not one of the court's generals had truly lived in the saddle. Go. No one knew if he would return. How long those 10,000 cavalry rode, the histories do not say, but we know what they faced. North of Xiongnu, the land rises onto the Inner Mongolian plateau. Tilled fields vanish, forests recede, an ocean of grass, roadless, markerless, with no herders to ask. The Xiongnu had already driven their herds deeper into the steppe. Wei Qing did what few Han commanders dared. He left the river valleys. Traditional Han strategy clung to waterways for water, but valley routes were predictable and vulnerable to ambush. He cut across hills and watersheds, driving north by the shortest line. This meant leaving reliable water and landmarks behind. He navigated by the sun, stars, wind temperature, grass density, and the flight of birds. 10,000 cavalry, moving day and night, carrying minimal rations, maximum arrows. They found Dragon's Altar. Not a city the Xiongnu built none, but their sacred ceremonial ground, earthen altars for heaven worship, the spiritual heart of the steppe. Every autumn, the tribes gathered here for ritual sacrifices. No Han soldier had ever set foot on this ground since Modu Chanyu forged the Xiongnu Empire. When Wei Qing charged, the defenders were utterly unprepared. Their main forces had been drawn off by the other Han armies. Only ritual personnel and a small guard remained. It had never occurred to them a battle could happen here. This holy site was not a military target, and they were over 400 li deep in the steppe. For Han troops to reach this place required 7 or 8 days of continuous march. It had never happened before. Arrows filled the sky. Han cavalry rolled in like a thunderstorm. The Xiongnu scrambled to mount, but their formation shattered before it formed. Han horsemen cut through the camps, trampling tents, stitching arrows across the altar grounds. Hundreds were killed, including high-ranking shamans and nobles officiating the rites. Ceremonial vessels were seized, livestock driven off, the high altar burned. Wei Qing did not linger. He gathered his troops, prisoners, and plunder and raced south. The danger now was pursuit once word spread. But he had calculated the timing precisely. Before the main Xiongnu forces understood what happened, he was safely back inside Han lines. The battle report was not long, but it struck Chang'an like a thunderbolt. Hundreds of heads. Dragon's Altar burned. The first Han victory against the Xiongnu in history. The shame of generations. Over 70 years of defense, endless court quarrels. 3 armies defeated, and the 4th, led by a slave, had driven a knife into the Xiongnu's spiritual heart. Emperor Wu summoned Wei Qing back immediately. The man ridiculed for a decade, sent out to die, knelt on the golden bricks, and delivered his report. The emperor stood and proclaimed his reward, Marquis of Guanay, a slave, a bastard without a father. Now, he was Marquis and general of chariots and cavalry. The assembly stood silent. The victory at Dragon's Altar did not kill the Chanyu or destroy the Xiongnu army. That did not matter. It cracked the dam. For 70 years, Han fear had been solid and impermeable. Now the shell fractured. Han troops could penetrate deep into the steppe. They could find targets. They could win. The psychological board had flipped. For Wei Qing, it meant more. He had cut through the court's contempt with a sword. His sister gave him the ticket. He earned his place. But Dragon's Altar was only the beginning. Wei Qing did not stop. Emperor Wu did not let him. Dragon's Altar proved Han troops could march deep and return. Now the emperor wanted territory, revenge, and a rewritten balance of power. Over the next 6 years, Wei Qing fought 5 major campaigns, 5 victories. In autumn 128 BC, the Xiongnu invaded again. Wei Qing led 30,000 cavalry from Yanmen to face them directly. Not a raid, but a pitched cavalry battle. Han ring-pommel sabers met Xiongnu curved blades. Han crossbows answered steppe archery. For the first time, the Xiongnu learned Han cavalry could fight them openly on the steppe and win. Thousands of heads taken, the Xiongnu retreated. Then came the battle that changed everything. In 127 BC, Emperor Wu fixed his gaze on the Ordos Loop, the fertile Hetao region inside the Yellow River's Great Bend. The finest pasture on the steppe, the Xiongnu grazed here and launched their deepest raids into Han territory. The region was a dagger against the empire's chest. Less than 400 li from Chang'an, Xiongnu cavalry could reach Weiyang Palace in 10 days. Emperor Wu sent Wei Qing to pull out that dagger. Wei Qing did not attack frontally from the south. A frontal assault against enemies with terrain and mobility advantages was a nightmare. Even if you won, they would simply ride away and return when you left. Instead, he marched from Yunzhong, then swung west along the Yellow River's northern bank at high speed, looping around hundreds of miles to the enemy's rear. His cavalry carried minimal rations. Before the Xiongnu knew what was happening, Han troops appeared on their escape routes. The Xiongnu commanders chose to flee, bursting north with their personal guards, abandoning their tribes, livestock, and the entire Ordos region. Over 2,300 heads, thousands of prisoners, over 1 million head of livestock seized. More importantly, the Han Empire reclaimed the Ordos permanently. Emperor Wu established Shuofang Commandery, colonized it, and fortified it. The Xiongnu would never again ride south from that ground toward Chang'an. This was Wei Qing's defining art. Grand flanking marches, encirclement, cutting off retreat. He ended wars before battles truly began. Next came Desert South. In 124 BC, Wei Qing led 30,000 cavalry beyond the border, targeting the right-worthy king, ruler of the western Xiongnu and second only to the Xiongnu. After losing the Ordos, the king had withdrawn deeper into the steppe. Certain the Han would not pursue that far. He was wrong. Wei Qing force-marched through the night, arriving at the king's camp in the darkness before dawn. The king was drinking, assured by scouts that Han forces were still hundreds of li away. He heard hooves as Han cavalry flooded his camp. It was total destruction. The king fled north with a few hundred guards, abandoning his soldiers, wives, stores, and herds. All captured. Over 10 high nobles, 15,000 tribespeople, hundreds of thousands of livestock. Emperor Wu could not wait for Wei Qing to return. He sent an envoy to meet the army at the border and appointed him general-in-chief right there in the field. The slave who once knelt to saddle horses was now supreme commander of the empire's armed forces. In following years, Wei Qing led further expeditions, each returning victorious. The Xiongnu feared his banner. His name spread across the steppe. He won with mobility and maneuver, not with mounds of his soldiers' corpses. In 119 BC, Emperor Wu launched the ultimate campaign, the largest expedition in Han history, pouring national strength into the northern desert to find and destroy the Xiongnu's main army. Wei Qing once again led, and once again delivered victory. After the Great Northern Campaign, the Han Empire entered an unprecedented situation. The Xiongnu had fled far, and no royal court remained south of the Gobi. In 7 years, Wei Qing had risen from slave to Grand Marshal and General-in-Chief, the empire's supreme military commander. His half-sister, Wei Zifu, was empress. His nephew, Liu Zhu, was crown prince. In his hands rested the heaviest military power in the empire. In the logic of every civilization's history, what follows is predictable. The general demands more. The general seizes more. The general becomes king, or is killed by the king. Romans knew this script intimately. In that same era, Marius and Sulla were already turning legions into private armies, dragging the Republic towards civil war. Caesar would soon cross the Rubicon. Once a general grips the sword, he never lets go. Wei Qing let go. He crossed no river. He did something incomprehensible within the logic of power. He simply continued being a loyal subject, not forced, not stripped of authority. Actively, clear-mindedly, willingly. When a man with absolute power, accountable to no one, chooses to restrain himself, that strength comes from inside. 2 events reveal this man more than any battle. First, he refused to build his own power network. After becoming general-in-chief, advisors urged him to keep a large retinue of retainers, following the ancient model of great lords who cultivated networks for fame and influence. Wei Qing refused. He said, "Great nobles of the past kept swarms of retainers, and the Son of Heaven gnashed his teeth in fury. Recruiting worthy men is the sovereign's business. A subject obeys the law and fulfills his duties. Why would I recruit retainers?" At the summit of power, he stripped himself of political armor, leaving no space for a personal faction. Second, his silence. During the Northern Campaign, the famous flying general Li Guang lost his way and failed to rendezvous with the main force. By military law, navigational error was a capital offense. Unwilling to face humiliating interrogation by law clerks, he took his own life. Wei Qing was supreme commander. Legally, Li Guang's death was not his doing. The error belonged to Li Guang's army. But Li Guang's son, Li Gan, believed Wei Qing had murdered his father. Li Gan was a fierce warrior and the son of a legend. Hatred flooded his veins. He stormed into the general-in-chief's residence and, before witnesses, punched Wei Qing to the ground. The empire's supreme military commander struck down in his own home by a subordinate. This was not a private grudge. It was the gravest possible challenge to military law. In any civilization, striking the commander-in-chief was a capital offense. In a Roman camp, the penalty was scourging to death. In Persia, the assailant's entire clan would be executed. If this went unpunished, military law became a dead letter. Wei Qing buried the incident. He did not report it. He did not retaliate. He spoke of it to no one. The supreme commander swallowed this humiliation alone. He had all the means for revenge. Grand Marshal, brother of the Empress, uncle of the Crown Prince. One word, and Li Gan would vanish. He did not speak it. This restraint was not weakness. It was profound moral awareness. He had climbed from the absolute bottom and knew how easily power destroys. He refused to use power to destroy another. He stayed silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because some words, once spoken, become blades that cannot be sheathed. But not everyone was Wei Qing. A year later, during a hunt at Gangquan Palace, someone shot an arrow from behind. It pierced Li Gan's neck. Emperor Wu announced Li Gan had been gored by a stag and did not pursue the matter. The affair was buried. What Wei Qing felt upon hearing this, the histories do not record. He continued serving, continued attending court, continued his silence. He had protected Li Gan from his own revenge, but could not protect him from another's arrow. After returning from the northern desert, No major war broke out between Han and Xiongnu for over a decade. Wei Qing aged in that peace he had won. His name faded from battle reports. A new generation of generals rose, and the empire's spotlight followed young faces and lightning raids. He withdrew into his residence, into silence, into history's shadows. In 106 BC, Wei Qing died of illness. Emperor Wu gave him the posthumous name Li, one who achieved through martial valor, and buried him beside his own future tomb at Maoling. He had guarded an empire in life. In death, he lay beside the Son of Heaven. His true legacy lies in what he did not do. He did not seize power. He did not take revenge. He did not make himself king. He circumvented the end that consumed great generals in Rome, Persia, and across history. Within the hard limits of an autocracy, he walked an almost impossible path: supreme achievement, peaceful withdrawal, natural death. He saved an empire, and then allowed that empire to forget him. In those years after Wei Qing returned to Chang'an and retreated into silence, the court had begun murmuring another name. That young man was also born a slave, also from the Wei household. He was Wei Qing's nephew. At 18, on his first campaign, he took 800 cavalry, split from the main army, and galloped hundreds of miles. He took over 2,000 heads and captured the Xiongnu Chanyu's uncle. Emperor Wu bestowed on him the title Champion Marquis. This young man's horse was faster, his blade sharper, his style of war far wilder. His name was Qubing.